Thank you. Some things are just common sense, aren't they? There's some things that are not very complicated. And when we look at them, the simplicity of it goes back to the backbone and foundation of this nation. When I was a young man, growing up in Alamo, Tennessee, Crockett County, Tennessee, when we went to school, I went to Alamo High School, Central High, and then to Alamo. When we pulled up on the school ground, I would drive my dad's 53 Chevrolet truck. And in the rear of that seat was a gun rack. And in that gun rack, there was a .22 and a shotgun. And every day that I pulled up on the campus of Alamo High, almost every truck on that school ground had the same weapons that were in their gun rack. Guess what? There were no school shootings. There were no mass shootings. There were no fights. There were no gunfights on the campus because at that particular time, we had parents, we had families, we had authority in the schools, we had rules, we had those who held folks accountable. I had a mama and a daddy that raised me in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and my mama had a switch that would turn corners. In essence, we did not have to worry about somebody running out to the truck and grabbing a weapon because everybody was taught respect for that weapon. They were taught respect for human life. They were taught respect for the school, for their fellow students of the Constitution. I remember going out in the front lawn of that school, and every morning we would have an assembly out there in the front. Mr. Strange was the superintendent of schools there at Alamo, and Mr. Atkins, I believe, was the superintendent of schools at Central when I went there. We would put our hand on our heart and we would say the Pledge of Allegiance. I knew the Pledge of Allegiance because my father had a flag in his office. He was a Korean War era veteran, and he taught us to say that Pledge of Allegiance. Before I ever went to Miss Riley's class in the first grade, I already knew the pledge because my father had taught it to me. When we look at ourselves, we've got to take an introspective examination of ourselves. There's in the Lord's parabolic teaching when he taught us, when he was on this earth, one of the parables that the Lord taught was the parable of the tares. He said that a man had sown good seed. And then while men slept, an enemy sown tares. And you know, when we look around us right now, we have to ask ourselves if we have been asleep at the switch. We have to ask ourselves if we have turned our heads, if we have allowed some things to encroach upon us that should never have encroached upon us. I want to read something to you that comes directly from the framers of the Constitution. When they were ratifying the Constitution, they said, the Constitution should never be constructed to prevent the people of the United States of America who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. Now, some folks need to be reminded that the Second Amendment is part of the Constitution. They have to be reminded that it begins with we, the people. And there are those who have forgotten that. The right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. That's a part of that statement. I looked up the word infringed. It means to be undermined, to be restricted, to be transgressed. The people of the United States of America have a right to bear arms that is not to be undermined, that is not to be restricted, and that is not to be transgressed. And you know, there are some things, as I said, that are not complicated. Benjamin Franklin said, who was also one of the forefathers and framers of the Constitution, he said that they that can give up essential liberty in order to obtain a little temporary safety, deserved neither liberty nor safety. Some things are not complicated, folks. When you look around us right now, we see a nation that has an identity crisis. We see a people that need to realize that there are some things that are worth fighting for and worth dying for. Eleanor Roosevelt kept a prayer in her purse that she read every night, especially as she watched her husband slowly dying from the suffering of noticing how many young men and women were killed on the battlefield every day under this flag that here recently we've seen desecrated and urined upon and set afire right here in our nation and even in the capital of our country. She read that prayer every night. She would take that prayer from her purse, and the prayer went something like this. The prayer that Eleanor read was, "Lest I keep my complacent way, I must remember somewhere out there a person died for me today. And as long as there is war, I must ask myself, am I worth dying for? Am I worth dying for?" When we look at this flag, when we look at this nation, when we look at our Constitution, when we look at the rights that many of us are beginning to take for granted, when we look around us and we see our young people being taught to hate everything this nation stands for. Let me give you a secret. When Peter denied the Lord 3 times, it was not because Peter was a coward. Peter would have fought to the death right there in the Garden of Gethsemane with that sword. He would have fought to death and gone down in a glorious death. But Jesus told him to put the thing away because I came to give my life. Peter dropped the sword and dropped his faith at the same time. Peter didn't deny the Lord because he was a coward. He denied the Lord because he had lost his faith in him. And 3 times he said, I don't know the man. Here's the relevance. A man will not die for that which he does not believe. And when we teach our young people to hate the Constitution, to hate the country, to hate the flag, to hate everything this nation stands for, you're not going to tell them 10, 20 years down the road, or maybe looking at things in the world right now, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, take this weapon, put on this uniform, and go die for this flag. They're going to say no because we've already taught them to hate this nation. A man won't die for that which he does not believe. When we are born in this world, we look like our parentage. Our mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, uncles, aunts, sisters, brothers, we look like our parentage. But when we leave this world, we look like our choices. And America is beginning to not look like its parents, its founders, its forefathers and foremothers, the men and women who laid down their life, their time, their treasure, their families to make this country come into existence. We're beginning to look like our choices to call the Bible an old Bronze Age book that has no relevance. Our choices to take away the authority of parents so that they cannot raise their children as they see fit. Our choices to turn our schools into places of lies and half-truths and propaganda that turns our schools into places of immoral teaching, and our college universities sent shame to the whole world, as the world witnessed our so-called most elite universities show that they don't know what America is anymore. It's time for us to take an introspective examination as a people and ask ourselves, are we worth dying for? They sent 13 flag-draped coffins home from that atrocity. Men and women who lost their children, lost their babies, their boys and their girls, because they served this country and they gave their last measure of devotion. Here recently, 4 flag-draped coffins came home when men and women of color lost their lives. Every day, some person puts that uniform on, says the Pledge of Allegiance to that flag, takes the weapon that has been assigned to them, and puts their life on the line so that this nation can continue. Booker T. Washington said something that we as Americans probably should take a look at. He said, a lie does not become the truth. A wrong does not become right. Evil does not become good just because it's accepted by a majority. There are those of us right now who have to decide and ask ourselves what side we're on. Joshua said in the scripture, as everybody in this room knows, I'm sure that many of you have a plaque on your wall that makes the statement that this old man made on his dying days. When he looked at his people and saw that they were straddling the fence, that they were not committed, that they did not realize just how much God had blessed them. How many folks don't understand? God has blessed America. God has blessed America. And Joshua looked at those people. I can hear the sadness in his voice when he said, if it seem evil, if this is not what you want, if it seemed evil for you to serve the Lord, he said, choose, 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 choose. He said, this day, who you will serve. But Joshua said, as for me and my house, y'all help me finish it. We will serve the Lord. When we stand for what we know is right, we are invincible. America is not powerful just because we have a great Navy and a great Air Force and Marine Corps and Army and all of the other services. We've got all this stuff to fight with, but many of us have forgotten what we fight for. America is powerful because our secret weapon is our God and our Creator who gave us these rights. Ronald Reagan said, freedom is only one generation from extinction. Say, we have to fight for it, protect it, and pass it on to our children for them to do the same. I pray that we as Americans understand our blessings, the greatness of this nation, and that our best days are yet to come. Thank you.